it's really easy for somebody to say, well, these guys don't know what they're doing. It's a failure. You can't have grass. So you don't think that was ringing in my ears during the first Silverdome project, back in 92. Got to be successful. If you can't be successful, you'll set this whole thing back 30 years. So, you don't want anybody to ever say, oh, this can't be done.
Well, Trey, go green and welcome to the middle.
Go white. Love to be here.
I don't think I have ever been more excited to talk to someone about grass and turf. I went to Michigan State. I'm very familiar with the program, but I got to ask you, why grass? How did this start with you?
Well, I'm a guy that grew up in Arkansas, but I also loved golf as a young person. And that took me working on a golf course and eventually out into the grounds of the golf course. And like so many other students that I have taught over the past 38 years, I caught the bug. And, from that catching of that bug, it took me to the classroom at the University of Arkansas and then to graduate degree there, and then finally one at Penn State and finished in 1988, long time ago now, and came to Michigan State in 1988 for what I told my mother and father was about 1 or 2 years. And 38 years later, I'm still here. So
MSU won you over more than Penn State.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you have to leave your school where you graduate from, I think.
That is true. I am probably, even though I went to Michigan State, a prime example of that being here in Colorado. I want to go back because you have such a wealth of knowledge of how turf and grass are used, especially in sports arenas and stadiums and golf courses. So I want to go back. What did a professional playing surface look like before turf science existed? And what did that look and feel like for the folks that were playing on those fields?
I would say probably back then, they love to use the terms that turf grass is an art and a science. And probably the early groundkeepers, they tried to use science, but it didn't always make sense to them, or we didn't have the answers. And so a lot of times it became the art. And if you look back to some of the early pictures, they don't look anything close to what we have today. And there's a lot of bare areas. And, one of the things that I think drove this more than most people will ever know, and this goes back into the 60s, right? So this goes back 60 years ago, when I was a young person. It's color television. Okay, so when color TV comes along, that person who's watching that game, they don't want to see a bunch of brown. They'd rather see green. They don't want to see a bunch of mud on uniforms. They want to tell what number is on that uniform. And so that changed the game. Now, it changed the game good and bad because first, it basically is the reason that artificial turf got started was because you didn't have those issues. If you were around in the first AstroTurf or sports artificial turf field goes into the Houston Astrodome, 66, 67. By the time you get to 1970, there is just about every major college is artificial turf.
That fast?
Yeah, it did not take long at all. And the main reason is, man, it looks green. We're on TV. We don't have to do anything for it. And of course, you talk to anybody that played on those fields back then, it was literally laying down a carpet over the top of asphalt, and that's what it exactly felt like playing on. And so then what happens is those players that were playing in the 70s, they go from their careers to the broadcasting booth. And when they get into the broadcasting booth, that's when they start really letting people know, hey, this is a terrible surface. Okay, this is a terrible surface, but what's the alternative? And of course, when I'm at Penn State, that's what I'm realizing as I go and I read. I went down to the National Football League Players Association for a couple of days down in Washington, D.C., and it just becomes to dawn on me that, okay, here's the opportunity. Here's what we need to do. And away we went.
I was going to say that. So it was literally just putting turf on asphalt. That's what it was.
Yeah, back then. Yeah, for sure. And so you got the public that is, at that point, the public is kind of pro-natural turf. They want grass, but if you put in a bad grass field, it's just as bad as a bad artificial turf field, all right? Because I can show you situations where, there was a game in the early 70s between Washington and I think it doesn't matter, but it's in the old Washington Stadium. And they built a brand new field and they put this sod down and they were going to be on Monday night TV. And they had not paid attention. They put the wrong sod down. It had not rooted. It it was doomed for failure. We know that now. We couldn't have understood it as well as we did now, as we today as we did back then. But it didn't stop that sod from coming up in chunks
In the game.
on the game, right? And so remember, when something like that happens, it's really easy for somebody to say, "Well, these guys don't know what they're doing. It's a failure. You can't have grass." So you don't think that was ringing in my ears during the first Silverdome project, back in '92. Got to be successful. If you can't be successful, you'll set this whole thing back 30 years. So, you don't want anybody to ever say, "Oh, this can't be done."
Mhm. How do you describe what you do to someone at a dinner party who has no idea what turfgrass science is?
Well, that's a loaded question because somebody will say to me, I want to do what you do. I want to do what you do. And I said, well, you better be careful with that because that does not have a stop point. That is a 24/7. And they don't understand what I'm saying. And I say it tongue in cheek, of course. But at the same time, if I go to a dinner party and I'm sitting next to my colleague who might be one of the absolute world class fed billions of people corn researcher, and we get introduced together, they may not ask them one question about corn. They'll ask me 10 questions about their yard and how to get rid of weeds.
I was gonna ask how many people ask you about their
Yeah,
lawns.
it is. Let me ask you, can I ask you one question about my yard? Can I ask you one question that's been bothering? I've got this one grass or this one weed that I don't know how to get rid of.
Trey, I've got a bald spot in my lawn over here right now. Um, you mentioned the Silverdome project, so I wanna talk about that. So and for folks maybe listening that don't know, so in 1994, FIFA was doing the World Cups, and they wanted natural grass. And so they came to you. Can you walk us through that? What was that like? What were they asking for?
Well, I, the big thing is they come to the United States. They want the United States to be a part of the soccer world, right? Because at this point, the U.S. is really the only country in the world that is not, crazy over this sport. So how are we going to get them crazy over it? Well, we're bringing a big tournament to here, and one of the things was they said, well, what's one thing that we can do that will really put a splash in? Well, let's see if we can't move a field into one of their dome stadiums because they're kind of the leaders in these dome stadiums. And there's a little backstory on this because prior to me getting there was Dr. Jim Beard, who was a professor here at Michigan State from 1960 through 75. Toward the end of his career at Texas A&M, he was commissioned to actually buy the three dome stadiums in the United States at the time, the Pontiac Silverdome, the New Orleans Superdome, and the Houston Astrodome. Each put up money, and they knew that one of those three was going to get the bid. And
Mhm.
so Beard wrote this nice report, and that's the report I read, and that's the report that they came to me or came to us and said, "Hey, we're gonna have a meeting with FIFA in early December of 1991. Do you want to be a part of this?" And I said, "Absolutely, I want to be a part of this." And they said because they have a World Cup coming to the United States, and that's when I uttered my famous statement, "What is the World Cup?" Because that's how much I knew about soccer. I did not know. I did not know what it was. Well, I figured it out in a hurry. So as it turns out, the Silverdome is the one that gets the bid. Had it gone to New Orleans, had it gone to Houston, my life would have been completely different. Because the Silverdome, obviously, I was the guy our team was going to be the people that put this field in, that developed this, solved this problem. But we wouldn't have solved it in Texas, and we certainly wouldn't have solved it in Louisiana because they would have used somebody else then.
Yeah.
So I've always been real happy with the fact that the Detroit bid committee was able to convince FIFA to do this.
And walk us through, like, What was the actual science of that? Because you were growing sod, keep me honest. You were growing sod on a modular system that was basically going to be transported and assembled indoors, right?
Yeah, so this is the first what you would call portable or temporary turf system that was really built, and, there have been some, other little things, but nothing of this stature, nothing of this nature, nothing that could be used over and over and over again like this
Mhm.
one could in theory. And so that's really what it was. And so, the components were the hexagon itself that we didn't figure out what to use until a company called Three Dimensional Services showed up and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about using a hexagon?" And the bees are pretty smart. They use a hexagon because that kind of allows them to have a shape that only has three sides come together. So you actually have a stronger system, and
Yeah.
you have less sides coming together. And at that point, we were very concerned about seams coming up, and so we
Yeah.
still weren't sure what to be even concerned about. We were concerned about everything and nothing at the same time. Stupid to know anything, and then concerned about everything. So, that was one thing, those hexagons, that made a big deal. And then the soil itself, that was something we knew we'd had to engineer because we'd have to have excellent drainage, but it didn't exist in nature, so we had to build that. And that goes back to what I was talking about, back in the 80s and then and 70s and 80s and the sand coming on. So, my good friend, Professor Emeritus Jim Crum kind of took the lead on that. And then the grass itself, we grew in California.
Oh,
Yeah, we grew it on plastic. That's where we kinda got introduced to sod on plastic, and people say, "Well, why didn't you grow it in Michigan?" Well,
yeah.
we only had about 6 months to grow it, starting in October, ending in April.
Great, that's a great growing time for Michigan.
That's exactly right. So, hello, sunny Southern California. Yes, we became big fans of that during that time. So, um that's all kind of flying by the seat of our pants during, between late summer 1992 and early 1993, because in that summertime in 92, FIFA came to us very much like they did this time and said, "Hey, we need to do a practice run. We got some things we need to
Mhm.
prove that it's going to work. And we want to make sure that it is going to work. So, what are your ideas?" And at the time, they really surprised us because they come to us in June of 92, and we think we got 2 years. We don't realize we only have 1 because they
Oh.
want something in June of '93, a game between England and Germany. All right, well, some quick thinking, and I said, "Well, we're gonna need you to build us a research dome on the campus." And, they did. And if you went to school between '92 and probably year 2003 or 4, that dome was up on that south part of campus all the time, and we were doing research in there for a good 10-year period. And then starting in March of '93, we basically went to the parking lot of, Pontiac Silverdome, and we'd wait for these modules to be delivered from the company building them. We'd already made our root zone, and it was stored in a warehouse, and then in April, here came the sod from California in big refrigerated trucks, and, we held a press conference for sod, and I was pretty sure that no one had ever held a press conference for sod before. I was pretty sure that would have been something for everyone, and, then we put the field together in April of '93 and sitting out on the parking lot of the Pontiac Silverdome, taking up about 400 parking places, and we have to figure out how to move it from there inside the
Into.
Silverdome, play the games, move it back out, put it back in the parking lot where it took up 400 parking places during the fall of 1993, and that was some revenue that the Detroit Lions lost. So I already began to realize in my mind, this is a good idea, but it's not the perfect idea because
Mhm.
but anyway, we got through the '94 World Cup and, changed our lives, changed the trajectory, certainly changed the trajectory of my career.
I wanna talk about the upcoming World Cup, but did you guys know at the time when you were creating that model for 1994 and rolling it into the Silverdome and back out, did you have any sort of inkling that you were creating something that would be more than just be used more than just at the World Cup?
Yes. I mean, the whole time I felt like the only way we could approach this was that we were representing all of turfgrass. Okay, that we needed to be successful. Anything short of success was going to knock this turfgrass back, and our dirty foe, that artificial turf, was going to gain a foothold. And so, that's been my foe, right? That's you want to say you want to get me going in the wrong direction. You say something like, "Well, you're artificial turf guy." No, I am not. Right? So, but that's been this huge tennis match between these 2 things, right? Because every
Mm.
time you improve the artificial turf, you hit one back down the line and say, "Take that, natural grass." And then the natural grass says, "Take that, artificial turf." And so, because people prefer to play on natural grass, but natural grass takes work,
Yes. And is
okay?
there something called hybrid turf?
Yeah, that's kinda been something that's probably been around for the last 20 years that, is something that FIFA likes for these World Cup, is which kinda combines the natural grass and reinforces it with a hybrid turf, and it's probably been around for 30 years. The first ones were dead awful, just drop dead awful. Ohio State had one in back in the, late 2000s or yeah, right in that period, and I can't remember the exact time, but, it failed miserably, and not being a Buckeye fan didn't bother me that much.
I was like, are we disappointed in that?
Well,
I don't think so.
not that much, but it's certainly I will tell you this, they've been artificial turf ever since, and
Oh,
it just use it as an excuse to see we can't grow natural grass.
yeah.
So, gotta always be careful what you wish for 'cause, I'm never gonna tell you that I want to lose a natural grass field to anything.
And how right now, when you stadiums across collegiate level, professional level, how many are natural grass versus turf versus that hybrid?
A little bit of it depends on the, level of the college, right? And so if you're the Southeastern Conference, for example, and their football fields are almost all natural grass, but they're also down in a part of the world where weather is their friend. Jump
Mm-hmm.
up into the northern part of the United States where it becomes more difficult. Sometimes you'll see artificial turf as is the prevalent, our friends in Ann Arbor, artificial turf. But obviously, you don't have to be artificial turf. You can be natural grass if you commit to it. Michigan State's a great example. Penn State's a great example. So, I mean, it can be done, and it is done. Purdue does it as well. The one thing that we have never changed in the whole 40 years I've been here, no matter how hard we try, you abuse natural grass. In other words, you put too much traffic on it, it dies.
Yeah. Especially on natural grass, arenas. What does that playing surface actually consist of? So what's happening under the turf that fans aren't seeing?
Well, the main thing is a what's called an engineered root zone, meaning that it is a special component of sand particles, silt particles, clay particles. There may be some artificial things like plastic grids, like we've talked about, but all these are put together in a systematic way to give the turf grass stability so that it doesn't come up in chunks, but it also allows it to drain. So if we get adverse weather. So it's a very specific science that has some true rules and laws to it that you cannot fight.
How has technology played into that? How has it changed how you I'm making this up, so keep me honest. How you monitor a field, how you check the health of the field. How has that changed, especially since you started in, the '80s doing this?
Well, the computer, of course, has done everything, right? And so now that we can collect data with moisture data, we can collect moles of sunshine, we can quantify every part of this through some of this technology. What's interesting is the ability of the grass to withstand X number of games of traffic. That increment change is nothing compared to the change that we've had in the technology. So what has really changed is the ability to switch out the grass.
Okay.
Okay, rolls what's and so one of the things that's really been a big time advancement in the 25 years is called big roll sod. Okay. So if you and I were going to go out to your bald spot in your front yard and resod that, we would probably use a piece of sod we'd got down at the Home Depot, and it was about 2 foot by 4 foot. That takes a lot of pieces of sod, and of course they're not very stable, right? I mean, you can't walk on that. You certainly couldn't play a football game on that. So this thing, big roll sod, which is pieces of sod that, just like the name says, except the piece of sod is 3.5 foot wide, might be 30, 40, 50 feet long.
Oh.
We start doing the math on that, and that weighs about 17 pounds per square foot. So each roll ends up weighing about 3,000 pounds, which means you and I aren't going to carry it anywhere. It's going to be pulled in on a forklift, and it's going to be grown in a specific sod farm. It's going to be cut. It's going to be harvested. It's going to be transported. But you also have an instant turf that's not moving. Okay, and you haven't seen a game in the National Football League on natural grass. There's very few fields that use the same field all year long. They switch them out.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times a fall.
The entire field or sections?
It can be just between the hash marks, and it can be the entire field. So that gets done on a regular basis. So all of this, knowing that this technology is available and that it just needs to be perfected a little bit, this goes into when FIFA comes to us in 2021 and says, "Hey, what's your ideas?" We know what our sod technology is. We know what our sod industry is capable of. And this industry is like no other in the world. I mean, it is top shelf. So it was easy to tell FIFA, trust us, we got your back. We got a few answers, we got a few questions that we've got to get answered. But we do think we have the group that can answer this for us.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll educate our listeners who may not know. You are supplying Michigan State has been working with FIFA for the last year or 2 to supply the turf for the World Cup, for the upcoming World Cup. How does that project compare to 1994?
That's an apple and an orange, really. It really is because, yes, we have a problem that we have to solve in 1994, and nobody had ever done anything like that. But we were with that project from start to finish. In other words, we were with the conception of the baby till the baby was born, and then even raising the baby after that. I mean, so that was that we were there the whole time. But it was one field. In
Mm.
2026. It's all 16 stadiums. It's all the grasses. It's solved the problem. It's the individual problem that could be at each stadium. What's the solution? What are you going to recommend? Give us a couple of grasses that are going to be able to play all the way through the stadium so that we have uniformity. So it's a much more complex situation in 26 than it ever was in 94.
'Cause it's across 3 countries too, it's not even just the US, obviously.
Right.
What does that process like for your team? How do you even start tackling something like that? 16 stadiums, 3 countries.
After a couple of teeth gnashing, sleepless nights, it dawned on me one day that it's the same thing that everything else we do is got to put it into categories. Everything kind of falls into a category, and the category we separated it into was you either are a permanent grass field or you're not. Okay, so the first thing was something like Kansas City or Philadelphia or Miami, where they're on grass today. A year from today, they're going to be on grass. 5 years from today, they're going to be on grass. They're in one category, and there was 8 of those stadiums. The other category is you aren't grass today. You're going to be grass for a couple of months. And then come August, you're not going to be grass again. You are a temporary field, and you are much like what we dealt with in the Pontiac Silverdome in 92 or 94, and there's 8 of those. Now, the interesting thing about those 8 is they can be divided further. And the 3 of them are outdoor fields,
Oh, okay.
Boston, Seattle, and New York, but 5 of them are dome stadiums. Again, much like the city of Silverdome. And so now you have Dome Stadium in Vancouver and Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta. Those dome stadiums provided another challenge in that there will be no sunshine. There will be no, because the sun is a bailout. The
Yeah.
sun will bail you out. If you get a little sun on something, the plant regrows. But when you don't have sunshine like we didn't have in the Pontiac Silverdome, you have to really be very wary of traffic, be very wary of anything excess that's going to cause stress to a plant. So now we have a lot of that going on in 26.
Has that been the hardest problem to tackle with these upcoming fields?
It's certainly at the top of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly the one of the top things, and of course, we've done some practice. We've done some practice runs. The 25 Club World Cup was a year we did some things. We also did some things in 2024 during the summer, and the dome stadiums were very willing to want to do this, right? Because they're like, we want to know our answers as bad as anybody else does.
Mhm.
And so we've had some very willing participants in this. But the thing about a multi-use stadium is, and you got to remember this, is that they're there to make money. They're not there just to have the grass and to look pretty during the summer. They're there to make money. And so talking about that big roll sod with you, if even if you go back to another stadium that is natural turf year round, it'd be nothing for them to take a natural turf field out for a month, play a bunch of concerts for a month, and then move a natural grass field back in.
Yeah.
So this is the technology that big roll sod allows. And so you have these farms that this is what they're known for being able to produce. And this has changed sports turf more than any other thing in existence, is simple a big roll sod. I know you asked me that question, and I get asked that question a lot, and that there's no question to me that that is the number one technology. We can talk about heat, we can talk about blowing air, but the fact that within a day I can rip it out and put another one in if I'm planning for it, that is the number one thing to me.
How long does it take the sod to grow for that? Because if that instantaneous factor is so important and has moved the needle more than anything else, how long has that sod actually been growing for? Like, how do you plan for that?
I'm gonna make sure, there are farms that grow big roll that harvest big roll sod, and, they do a pretty good job, but when you harvest it like that out of a field, you cut the roots off, and then it has to regenerate, and there are certain species of grass, Bermuda grass, that do a better job at that than others, but at the same time, you lay that down and you have to pay very close attention to it because you need it to reroot into that soil, and if it's not the right time of year and it's not gonna root, what do? They cut it a little bit thicker, maybe allow it to, just persist in the original root zone. Now what has changed is they grow it on plastic, okay? And
Oh,
this is the thing that we're doing for the World Cup, is everything has to be grown on plastic. Because once you grow sod on plastic, it's the same thing, I'm gonna take an inch and a half worth of sand of this engineered root zone, lay it down on this piece of plastic, then I'm going to establish the grass, and it's gonna grow down through the plastic, but then when it hits the plastic, it starts growing laterally. So I'm basically building then sod in a box
yeah.
or sod in a pot. It's not a whole lot different than what we did in the Silverdome project. It's not a whole lot different than any other modular system. It's just got invisible walls. So now you have this sod that when you pick it up in that big roll sod and you lay it down, this is a plant that it transports very easily because I'm just picking up something that's alive and I haven't cut its root system down at all. I,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I put it under no physiological shock. Somebody says, when do I have to start watering this? I'm like, you could wait 3 or 4 days if you wanted to, but if you wanted to, because it's not going to kill it. So this is
Yeah.
a big game changer is what it is. What's interesting, FIFA had never seen this before. So they come in 21, 22, 23, start coming over, trickling over, getting ready. Qatar's over with, and we're showing them our idea. Okay, this is how we want to solve this. And it dawns on me one day, our main guy, Alan Ferguson, the boss, the chief. I'm like, Alan, you've never seen sawed on plastic before. No, just what you guys were telling me. Because it's such a United States thing. Okay?
Oh.
It's a US thing, and yes, it's in Canada now, but, we
Mm.
introduced it. Yes, it's in Mexico now, but we had to introduce it. And, it's growing as far as farms that we have it in the United States, and a lot of that has to do with this World Cup project in general. People ask me about the legacy. I say it's the sod on plastic. That's the legacy that will really be a game changer for athletics.
Does the playing surface, especially if it's sod or turf or that hybrid, does it affect athlete performance, whether safety, speed, or does it not really matter? Does that not really factor in?
They adjust. Athletes adjust to whatever surface, but they've done a bunch of surveys and they'll always, like the National Football League says they prefer to play on natural grass. Soccer players prefer to play on natural grass. Well, soccer players are very used to playing on grass. For them, it becomes predictability. The thing about game of soccer is it's the ball rolls everything. Football, it's not. Football, the
Mhm.
ball roll is nothing. If the ball's on the ground in American football, the whistle is about to blow. And so, one thing it is in football is make sure 300-pound guys can go at each other with full understanding that the grass is not going to come out from underneath their feet. With baseball, the grass is really secondary because the game is played on the infield. The game is played on the dirt. But in soccer, the smoothness of the grass is everything. And so I usually like to tell you that we take care of soccer field grasses like we take care of putting green grasses because the ball roll is everything on a putting green as well. That's probably one of the big things. And the best players in the world, they know differences in grass, they know differences in height, they know differences in ball bounce, and they'll be able to tell you this. And then as far as you ask me about artificial turf or you ask me about injuries or whatever, there are I think you can say that there are some people that prefer natural turf to artificial turf. There's no doubt about that.
Mm.
And they might perceive that they're less likely to get injured on natural grass. And you might see some information that would suggest there is a slight chance that you have a slighter greater chance to have an injury on artificial turf. I don't disagree with all that, but my feeling or my observations have always been how much easier a player recovers after they play on natural grass versus an artificial turf. How much easier it is on their joints. The easiest way to look at that is to see that, yes, about half the fields in the National Football League, as far as games, are artificial turf. And a lot of times that's driven by the city or it's a multi-use. But if you go to their practice facilities, they practice on natural grass. And that is because it is much easier on their bodies. So that is in a nutshell what it tells me, that it's easier on the bodies. We can talk about the injuries all we want to. But if it's easier on your body, and that means you get to earn money to play a game for 11 years instead of 8 or 9, you tell me what the differences are.
And I think that's kind of when I look at stadiums themselves and how they're becoming so much more technologically sophisticated across all sports. They're smarter, they're more data driven. To me, the turf science fits into that as well, and for exactly why you just said, because it has direct implications on, less on the fan experience. We all know some techs are all about the fan experience, but this actually has longevity to how long can players play? Are they playing with less or more injuries? Is their performance better to then result in a crucial play? I think that is what so many people don't think about. They think about these very high-tech stadiums, and they think, "Do I have a hologram popping up telling me which player it is and their stats?" But it's just as much about what the surface they're playing on.
I couldn't agree more. And, these are things that, I think are coming. That's why we have the big road side. It's why we do the research on, what's the best way to do this. And I think we've got some further things coming down the road even after this 26 World Cup, which will be just as exciting.
I was gonna ask you, what is the biggest unsolved problem in turf science right now?
The number one plain and simple is unsolved horizon is if you abuse grass, it dies. I mean, I cannot abuse it and make it last any longer. That is the number one thing that stops anybody from saying in these new stadiums, whether they're domed or they have all kinds of shade, you know, how are we going to keep the grass from dying? And, so you offer them this idea of the big roll sod, the change out, things of this nature. So you slowly get into their mind, I see the solution because, the idea of how much it costs, they make that money in a concert in a hurry. They just put that into the cost of the concert. Been watching them do that for 25 years. That's not a big thing, but it's will it be a safe surface for the players to play on? Will they perform at their ultimate best? And, this is where you have a turf manager. This is where they make their money. This is why we have the students come to Michigan State. This is what they want to do. So it all kind of works together.
Michigan State's program has become a model for other universities. Like I said, I grew up in the East Lansing area. I went to Michigan State. It was always known to me, and I didn't study turf management. I went to the comm school, but it was always known to me how well our program was. When you look at that ripple effect, having been there since the late '80s, what does that mean to you?
I do remind the students I was even there prior to the computer, and so that's a little bit of a long time, but it's the greatest teaching job in the world. Number one, because I'm teaching a student normally who got into this field because they worked on a golf course or an athletic field. You think about how wonderful Michigan State would be if every student already knew what they wanted to do before they came to school, and how dedicated they would be in the classroom and unboard because they already knew this is what they wanted to do. And so we tailored every class to exactly what they wanted to do. I've had the easiest job in the world, and the greatest students in the world. And when people say about you, "Hey, you're thinking about hanging it up." Every year I think about hanging it up. And then every year I think about the students and I say, "Well, I think I'll go one more year. I'll go one more year. I maybe I'll retire when Coach Izzo does."
I would say you and Tom Izzo, Trey.
Right.
I have
I've told him that before. I said, "I'm hanging on for as long as you do, coach."
I have to say, I wish hindsight's 20/20 in life. I wish I knew now what I knew when I was at Michigan State because and I say this not just because 'cause you're on the podcast. I would have done turf management. I very much went to MSU not knowing what to do. I went through 3 different majors and landed on comms because I thought it was, something I was decently good at. I have always said, especially as I got into the real world and, moved around, I wish I had listened more to what I liked doing and because I would have probably done turf management. It would have been such a fascinating career field. So, I don't know if I can come back and get a degree.
It's not too late. I mean, I have my oldest student ever was 60 years old. Name was Weber, and he was a retired dentist. So it is not too late. Do not ever sell yourself short. We got room.
Oh, I might consider that. You've worked on 2 World Cups now. You've worked in some of the most iconic venues. You have Michigan State. If you had to name a moment that crystallized for you why you've done this, is there a moment?
That's a good question. I've never had anybody ask me that question. That's just, you know, I remember when they kicked off in the Spartan Stadium right after we did this project, 2001, right? And the look on everybody's face that here was natural grass back in the stadium for the first time since 1969, because Michigan State was one of the first groups that got into that artificial turf that we were talking about. And to know that that project had been one that they entrusted to the turf program to bring home, that was pretty good. I mean, that everybody was watching that. And, everybody has a lot of pride in the fact that they say, "Well, we have a grass field in Michigan State. Why can't everybody else have one? Our guys have one," right? You like that, right? You like that. You like going into that stadium and seeing that natural grass and anytime you go there. So that was a lot of pressure on that particular project that we don't talk about very much. But as much as people talk about the pressure that was on the Silverdome, I will tell you this one was more. That one was always more pressure because that was our backyard.
I would say it was home turf, no pun intended.
I can still remember Peter McPherson pulling up he had this PT Cruiser that he drove, and he had this big cigar that he chomped on because nobody knew about it. I don't think anybody knew he's a big cigar smoker because he just smoked it when he was in his car, and he pulls up, and we were seating modules. Our modules were being seated way back in the back of the Hancock Center, and it's hot. We're struggling along. We got this one weed that's popped up, and it's just not going. It's not going great. It's not bad. It's just not going great. But it's okay. I'm not worried. But McPherson comes up and he's jumping on the cigar. He pulls it down. Do you guys know what the hell you're doing? He says. I said, I hope so. I hope so. Because there's a lot of people that are dependent on this. But I'll never forget that because he pulled in and just shocked everybody that here comes the president to check this out. But there's a lot of pressure.
I think you have more than proven that you know what you're doing, Trey, across
Oh, I don't know
so many projects, so many decades. I don't have any doubt in you. I still would like some tips on how to solve this bald patch in my yard if you have time.
Yeah, we'll just send the pictures. We like I said.
It was sod, I'll tell you. It just didn't. Colorado's not the best growing grounds.
No, but that's one of the interesting. That's not very far. Where you live is not very far from one of our most important sod farms in Platteville, Colorado.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, they're growing the sod for Dallas and Houston and Atlanta, cool season grass sod there, and Green Valley turf, and they will be harvesting that here shortly. And that's a big time place for us.
If they have it, like, I don't know, a couple feet extra, I'll give you my address.
I suspect they're gonna have a little left over.
Well, Trey, thank you for taking the time to come on. This was so insightful and so informative. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with our audience. It's been great to chat with you, and this has been lovely. Thank you for being here.
Loved every minute of it. Thank you. Go Green.
Thanks for spending time with us in the middle. If today's story caught your attention, drop a subscribe, share the episode, follow us on social media, and remember, it ain't over till it's over.